1. My husband and I got married in October, a small ceremony with just us and our parents. We honestly wanted to elope, but we knew it was important to both sets of parents to be there. And it was basically a lovely weekend. The day was beautiful. On the wedding day, my mother-in-law started crying to my mother while I was getting my makeup done, saying she was losing her son, he was being taken away, etc. She never said anything to me, but it made my mom uncomfortable. My mom was just excited for the day. There were some little microaggressions throughout the day towards me, constantly telling me how lucky I was. I had no idea how good I was getting it. But honestly, whatever, it's fine. I was too happy about getting married to let it really bother me till later. My husband and I agreed beforehand that we could do small receptions for our families. We both have families that'd like to get together and celebrate. Even though we were both fine with just a wedding that we did, we are both currently in grad school, and I am currently at a time in my career where I'm managing lots of projects and trying to move up the ladder in a field I love. Lots of my big projects are in the winter, so we agreed and then told both our families that a small party with each side in our hometowns would be fine. But it would have to wait until spring once our semesters wrapped up, and when I had more bandwidth at work. My family said, sure, no problem, the weather will be better then anyways. Whatever you all want to do, just let us know. His mom said, no one in our family will care about it by then if we wait that long. Instead of holding to our agreement, my husband caved, and now it's being held this weekend, 8 hours away during a very stressful time. I feel like I'm being ungrateful, but I clearly communicated that this was a bad time. My husband is saying that his family compromised by us having a small wedding with only our parents, so we have to compromise on this. In my opinion, it wasn't a compromise for them, it was our wedding, so we should get to do what we want. In the same vein, this is supposedly our reception, so shouldn't we also get some say? Additional context, my mom comes and visits us all the time, we're very close, I talk to her every day. We never fight, we're just best friends. He isn't super close to his family, they don't visit much, we don't really visit them. So he says they miss him more. I just don't know what to do, I'm so burnt out by all this. At this point it's the weekend, so I know I have to go. But I feel like this is part of a bigger pattern I don't know how to address. A Hellfreezer's note, you're newly married, you need to establish firm boundaries and communication with your partner. You've already made it clear, and he seemingly agreed it was a bad time to have any kind of a party now. And you weren't saying never, you were just saying now. Now, presumably you've already gone ahead with the party, with the celebration at the time I'm posting or recording this story. But we need to consider what happens going forward. You and your husband are a team. You can't make decisions like this without him. He can't make decisions like this without you, and he did. And I think that's the bigger problem here. Now, you married him, so obviously he has his redeeming qualities. However, your marriage is made up of two people. For some folks, marriage is made up of more than two people work fine, but in your case, two people. And those people need to work together and be mindful of the responsibilities, the limitations, and the mental and physical health of their partner. I think he got pressured by his family is what happened, so he needs to learn to stand up to them. Good luck to both of you, and I hope you all work it out. 2. My fiancé's mother is the type we all know, wants her baby boy husband-boyfriend at her beck and call. He and I met when I moved to their state. He was living with her at the time because she's been financially abusing him since he was young, and has made sure to fill his head with nonsense about him being unable to succeed without her, etc. Mother-in-law and stepfather have been building an apartment on their property for him, saying the deal was that he would take time off work to help build it, pay utilities, etc., and it would be totally his. The apartment was built by his stepfather's friends who only came around when they were paid to. The building has no permits and wasn't built on any kind of code. His stepfather was a hoarder, and there were mounds of industrial trash around the building. The man would buy nonsensical audition lots, i.e., 15 office filing cabinets, and leave them out in the elements in a random spot. He was a disbarred lawyer, due to taking advantage of a client he had been living with by extorting him for labor. The 2 weeks promised turned into 2 months, and more than full-time labor that was genuinely dangerous. His stepfather would try to force him into unstable structures that he and his buddies wouldn't go into, etc. They treated him like a teenager most of the time, and he's into his 30s. He had been anxious about coming out and living with them, as his mother had always said just the right thing to convince him it would all be okay, and that it was just such a wonderful opportunity for him. I met him at a community barbecue where I was establishing clients for my trim carpentry company. I ended up working for them on this building. My living situation got weird. An intentional community that was more like a bunch of kids smoking and drinking in the woods. No judgment really, just not my scene. Not what I heard in the rounds of interviews I did with the community. And I was looking for a room to rent while I found something more permanent. His mother offered me a room in their house. I offered her market rent. She said she'd give it to me for free. They just needed me to help demolish and rebuild a smokehouse. Totally for free. I, of course, didn't take her up on that. My now fiancé offered me a private spot in his apartment. Small but doable, and was told he could have anyone in there he liked. How naive we were. I was still working for them, now living with my partner. We were building a relationship and enjoying each other's company, and I was paying him to help me do my work. Once his mom found out, she offered him exactly what they were paying me, as a very unclear form of compensation. Seemingly, she didn't notice that an adult with bills working full-time for 2 months with no pay would be in financial distress. So there was no way really for him to organize either to get employment because they had kept trapping him into more and more projects. Once it was clear the building would be finished, then they were doing another building that they just started calling the apartment, as if he's not going to notice. His stepfather would walk into the apartment whenever and then declare my fiancé would be spending the day painting about 500 boards. He just went out and bought for a totally different project, even when my fiancé has had a full day of labor planned for work on the property. It was maddening in how little sense it made, how the deals, plans, and reality just constantly shifted. The stepfather thought he knew absolutely everything about construction, and he was constantly going behind the men he'd hired and messing things up. They'd had to redo the fuse box twice because he'd gone behind and done something. Things started getting weirder. Right, I know. I type it out and think, why didn't we leave? It all happened so fast and with so much intention to keep us trapped, disoriented, stressed to all hell, and confused. And my fiancé was still in the fog, thinking his mother would just understand if he explained everything to her correctly. She started confiding in me about how furious her husband made her, that she had been an adult entertainer when she'd moved out here. Baby-trapped his dad into marrying her while cheating on her first husband. Now she's a holier-than-thou perfect Christian woman that wanted to know about my sex life with her son, constantly asked me about our finances, tried to set herself up as an authority between us so she could approve of what we were doing in our relationship, and literally couldn't hear a no. Forced her way into our apartment by playing my fiancé and I off of each other, and then be upset when we weren't thrilled to have her. When we started spending the weekends together alone, she would offer to come help out. If my fiancé told her we were doing our own thing, she would hear, "I hate you, you're not welcome," and then tell me that's what my fiancé said to her. I was constantly hitting her with, "I'm sorry that's what you heard," and fiancé said. She was incredibly racist, and the one dinner that I cooked for her and her husband as an effort to establish a decent relationship was so racist. My fiancé ended up saying something to her about how weird it was, and she immediately decided that I was the one that had said something, even though I hadn't talked about it. About a week before the apartment was done, they set me up to be fired, since their goal consistently was getting free labor with someone they could easily control. The stepfather, when the plumber dug a trench and ran the main water line between buildings, just had to also be involved in that, so decided to run a line for the internet in the trench. The cable he ran was short 3 feet from connecting to his modem. He forgot to put on the protective jacket, and the modem didn't even have the port to accept the cable. When I was asked to get involved, I was told that all that was needed was an end attached to the cable on the side in the apartment, and then handed the wrong nonsensical cable splicers meant for joining 2 male ends of cables. After gathering the correct ends, I disengaged what I thought was the cable from the modem where it originated, and that's when I learned all of the above information. Due to weak signal strength from the road, the internet in his mother's house remained non-functional, again unknown to me. I took a break and went back to the apartment. All hell broke loose when his mother decided I disengaged the cable purposefully, to steal their livelihood from her. She stormed over to the apartment where my fiancé and I were eating, pounded on the door, opened it, and launched into a rant about her internet. Any attempts to interrupt were met with more ranting, so I told her I'd be by to take a look in a second. She stormed out the door and slammed it. I made an audible remark about rudeness, and she became absolutely outraged and started screaming that I was stealing her livelihood from her, and that I was trying to make sure she wasn't able to work again, etc., etc. We struggled over to the door, and I closed and locked it while she kept screaming and throwing her body at the door. Then she ran around to the other door to the building and tried to get in, screaming and throwing herself against it. She left eventually, and my partner went over to try to talk to her and deal with the internet. I calmed myself and went over, and the second she heard the door became outraged, ran down the stairs yelling at me, and I turned around and walked out. I didn't speak to her again after that. She used that as justification for trying to force my partner into throwing me out of his apartment, with no notice, the next day, and without a week and a half of hours they still owed me. He didn't comply, obviously. To this day, she is convinced that I was the one committing domestic violence against her that day, and following. After that instance, we didn't really speak to his parents, although we received an invitation to be part of the family and join them for Thanksgiving from the heart. He tried to communicate how awful the situation they had put him in had been, and it fell on completely and willfully deaf ears. After the rejected invitation and rug sweep attempt, his mother started writing him emails psychoanalyzing me based on the very brief interactions she and I had had. She made up most of my history, and she was sure that everything that she said that she didn't like was actually me saying it, and would use things that my fiancé said to his mom as proof that I was an evil narcissist. She spent 3 paragraphs outlining how I was intentionally ripping their family apart, based on my fiancé telling his mother that he felt she treated him like he was a kid. My fiancé and I stayed together and mainly tried to keep to ourselves and get momentum going to move out. These people would eavesdrop on us constantly. There was a stool shed attached to the house, and his father would sit in it for hours at a time, every evening for about a month, up until I left for work in a different location. Again, stories for another time. Every time we'd get closer to the goal of moving out, there would be some major fabricated drama that would be incredibly stressful for a week or 2, and then she'd just drop it and pretend it didn't happen. Most recently, we're the closest we've ever been to moving out and moving on. I'm so proud of my fiancé, and he's started getting to managerial level duties at work. I'm working on building up 3 small businesses while I've been ramping up a job search. This woman fabricated a conflict, lied to a judge, and had a restraining order filed so she could perform an illegal eviction. My fiancé's father passed away the day she had the order served, and my fiancé's sister set the date of the viewing and the funeral for the same day and time as the court hearing. His sister texted him to tell him he's an awful person and called me a bitch dog. And then she told the entire family that he didn't go to his father's funeral because he won't just forgive her for saying what she said, but she's just so sorry because it wasn't very Christian of her. We were able to get the order dropped since it was a deranged fabrication to begin with. But it's a small town, and the local police knew his stepfather, and are helping his mother to essentially decide that the verbal lease agreement doesn't matter, that he needs to obey his mommy, and that the only way he's allowed access is if we're no longer engaged. This woman has gone absolutely atomic to every perceived limit to her authority. Her favorite phrase is, "I'm the mom." After the fabricated conflict, we texted her telling her we wouldn't be engaging with her in person, and reoffering a family therapy session with her son to talk things out. Her response was to essentially say, "Go die" to both her son and me. Now we're scrambling to get ourselves sorted because this woman can't seem to grasp that an apartment isn't paid for in lollipops, and that giving someone zero notice to move a life is a potentially life-threatening situation. It's all about her power and control over her son and her property. She's still absolutely sure that I made her son do it, and it was all part of my evil plan to make her turn on her own son. I don't really need advice, but some kind words would be wonderful. We're hopeful and know that the only way for us to really grow is to never speak to this woman again, and allow her to have any access to our lives or power over our finances again. Hellfreezer's note. You're gonna do great. You're gonna move out. You're gonna get a place, and you'll build a life together, away from her. If possible, move out of that town would definitely be a good idea. And eventually Mommy will feel regret, she'll be sad and alone, and she'll want contact again. Do not waver, do not cave. You've given her plenty of chances, she's chosen not to take them. And best of luck to both of you. 3. I'm a 36-year-old man, and my mom is 56. She has had a dramatic change in behavior since my partner, 28 and non-binary, gave birth to our baby in April. It actually started a little before that when we informed Mom that we weren't having anyone at the birth, and were planning to isolate from everyone for 2 weeks. After some back and forth, we came down to a week of isolation, under the condition that there was no health concerns with the baby. Even after that concession, she still wrote me a long email that we were freaking out unnecessarily, and sent it along with a text that said, "I guess I'll just F off until you need me." I responded with, "We want you to be the first family member to meet the baby. We would like for you to recognize that as a privilege it is. We need compassion, patience, and understanding. We do not need judgment, anger, disrespect, or entitlement. My partner is going to be in a medically and emotionally fragile state, and if they want to be left alone to heal, that's their right. For the immediate future, they and the baby are one unit. If we want to give the baby a week or two to build up her immune system and for my partner to heal, that's our choice to make. It's not a ban on you. It's not about you at all. Remember when I isolated for the better part of a year during COVID? So I wouldn't get you or your husband sick? Y'all had working immune systems, and I still made that choice. Further input on our birth plan is not welcome." She ended up liking the message, and then we never spoke about it again. A few days after this exchange, our beautiful daughter was born. There were no complications, but there was some tearing during the birth process. We made it back home for the next week. My partner largely stayed in bed to heal and to breastfeed the baby. Important note here, I was not a breastfed baby, and my mom went back to work as soon as she could, finished up her military service, then moving back in with my grandparents when my dad left us. I spent a lot of time in childcare, and when my partner told me they wanted to avoid paying for childcare, I was on board. Anywho, back to the story. I'm on paternity leave, and we've been caring for our newborn for a week. She's healthy, and we make the decision that we'll introduce her to family that weekend. We reach out and my mother tells me she can't meet us because she's moving, but we can come over when she's done. At the end of the day, she sends me a picture of her living room, says it's not in a state for company, she's hurt her knee, and that we should try another time. Okay, no problem. We brought the baby to my partner's aunt that weekend, and she got to be the first family member to hold the baby instead. I decide to keep that bit of info to myself, though. So Monday rolls around, Tuesday, so on and so on. No word from Mom. By the weekend, she's ready to meet the baby. So, the same woman, who was heartbroken that she couldn't meet the baby for 2 weeks, actually postponed meeting the baby herself until the 2-week mark. I was perturbed by the irony, but figured once she got to hold the baby, we could put all this animosity behind us and move on. The day of the meeting rolls around, and we head over to her house. As soon as we enter the house, I just immediately hand her the baby. We have a pleasant dinner, and Mom holds the baby the whole time. We go to leave, and I think everything is working out. That week, Mom sends me a text telling me that she needs alone time with the baby and that me and my partner need our alone time as well, for dates and other intimate moments. At this point, my partner is still stitched up, and I have gotten my own stitches from a vasectomy. We are not interested in advice about intimacy, especially from my mother. At the time, my partner was only producing about 1 ounce of surplus milk. I explained the situation and that we can't leave my mom with enough milk for any sustained alone time. Mom just responds, "Awesome." I decide not to get into an argument over text, but at this point I'm getting pretty annoyed with the attitude. About a week later, Mom sends me a text to tell me that she has some things she needs to say to me, and that I don't want to hear, and that she'd like to know what my preference would be as far as a setting where we could meet. As it turns out, I also have some things to say that she doesn't want to hear. I had hoped to put this behind us, but it's clearly not behind us. I'm ready to give her a chewing out. I say that I want to meet her outside at the docks in public. She states that she'd rather meet at her house and make dinner. She also wants it to be at a time when her husband was out of town. I remind her that my preference that she asked for was to meet outside. She said she would meet. And then when the day of the meeting rolls around, she cancels the meeting, citing inclement weather. "We live in a rainforest, it's always raining a little." But I'm still convinced that I want this meeting in public. I have no intention of swearing at her or yelling at her, and if she wants to do that to me, I want her to feel how embarrassing it really is to act like this. So okay, fine, we can meet another day. 5 days go by and 3 of them are sunny. No word from Mom. At this point, my paternity leave is about to wrap up, and the whole leave has been spent with this dark cloud of Mom's disappointment hanging over us. I send her this at 8:30 in the morning on a Friday. "Have you reconsidered your need to say things that I don't want to hear? Because I'm going to be even less interested in doing so when I go back to work on Sunday." The day goes by with no word from Mom, so by 6:30 I figure, screw it. I'm going to condense this butt chewing into a text and send it off. It reads, "Cool, I'm going to take that as a yes. You've clearly reconsidered." I think what's happening here is you're getting a few drinks in and deciding it's a good idea to send me things like the "screw off till you need me" text, or offering unwanted advice on my intimate life. Then you wake up the next morning, and rather than reckon with how disrespectful and out of line you were, you think I'll just forget about it and move on, and I won't be doing that. You've been immature, demanding, and thoroughly unhelpful at a time when we were at our most vulnerable. Reading your messages to my partner has been an absolute embarrassment, especially considering their own mother is likely not going to make it to this time next year. And you know, I've been thinking a lot about the wording of that message. The screw off one. Did you choose that wording because of my cousin? And if you did, let me ask you, if there was a chance that he would be willing to talk to you if you called him, would you do it? If all you had to do was apologize for being so pushy at a point when he was at his weakest and most humiliated, just admitted that you took things a little too heavy, too harsh, that you were sorry, and you hope he's doing well, you think he'd hold on to that resentment? He joined the Marines because he craved the respect that came with it. You could offer him an apology and that basic respect and lose nothing except being right. When you're ready to take some accountability, I'll be here, but sitting around until I need you is only going to result in more lost time. Background info here. My mom went no contact with my cousin when he had a mental health crisis in the Marine Corps and wanted to off himself. She called him as he's strapped to a hospital bed, and he told her to F off. She never forgave him for saying that and refuses to try and reach out. For 15 years, Mind you, this is a kid she basically raised in his later childhood. I figure the "I guess I'll just F off until you need me" was inspired by that. My mom doesn't respond to my message, and instead I hear from her husband. He tells me that we need to stop texting, and continuing to do so isn't productive. He's not wrong. A few days later, I get this from Mom. For the record, I've shared this with my husband, all of our texts and my emails. He's advised me that continuing this line of communication is not wise, nor will it be productive. I love you too much to cut off communication without trying to fully understand what is going on in your head. I admit I have made mistakes of trying too hard to be heard and not trying enough to understand. Though I am mad as hell at you for so carelessly breaking my heart and seemingly refusing to care, I do recognize that you are under a lot of pressure, undergoing a great deal of change, and though you may not be doing that as gracefully as I would like, I still love you and really want to try to work through this nightmare rather than just turning off the light and going cold. That's certainly an option. However, if you wish to continue making me out to be some sort of villain, in your last text you said when you're ready to take some accountability I'll be here, but sitting around until I need you is only going to result in more lost time. Never let it be said that I'm not willing to take full accountability for anything I've done wrong, or that I want to be responsible for more lost time. Before I can take accountability, I need to understand what I've done wrong, so I have some questions and ask that you clarify exactly what I need to be held accountable for. Please read and respond to the email I am sending you. I didn't read the email. It went straight to the spam folder and deleted. Mom is the fastest word processor that I've ever met, and can give you a thesis-length essay in record time. I felt that I'd rather be changing diapers, not reading some of this nonsense. I'd chalk that email up to a journal entry and hope that it helps her process her grief. I screenshotted her message, sent it to her husband, and told him I would not be responding. A few days later, Mom messages me telling me I need a new cell provider. I've been on the family plan since college. It clicks in my head that maybe she was speaking this way via text because she knows she's paying for it. I welcome this new reality. After all, there's a lot more cell providers around now. I'm able to get an unlimited call and text plan for less than $200 a year. Now I've got a new number, and the only people who have it are my work and my partner. The disappointed and demanding texts have ceased. Life seems peaceful. Admins at work reach out about promoting me. They offer to give us a 20% raise and a big new responsibility. However, because the town we live in is kind of a getaway destination, it's still not enough to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. My partner wants more space, and I want to give it to them. The offer they made me is the rock-bottom minimum compared to the market value from other employers. Also, if I'm to take the job, they're expecting me to stay on for years and to prove my value before giving me any more. Well, at this point, we've got about $25,000 saved up between us, and I start thinking about moving out of town. Buying a house here seems like golden handcuffs. You can get a cute 2-bedroom for like $350,000 minimum. My promotion would have me sitting at $60,000 a year. The math ain't mathing for me. Especially when the same house in Syracuse, Erie, or Cleveland would be going for less than $90,000. I figure making $45,000 to $50,000 a year in a $90,000 house makes more sense than $60,000 a year in a $350,000 house. So I'm looking to relocate. After all, the primary reason I moved back to town 11 years ago was to spend time with Mom because I knew life was short. As I'm applying for jobs and looking at houses, a sense of guilt starts nagging at me. What if we leave town and she finally decides she's ready to reconnect? I figure I should call, after all. We haven't actually spoken to one another in over a month now. I call her from work on a break, no answer. Call her husband, no answer. I wait a bit, call them both again, no answer. I tell my partner what's going on, they try to call, no answer. My partner sends the following on Monday of this week. Hi, mother-in-law, I understand you're angry right now, but if this was your last day on Earth, I know you'd regret leaving things in the state they are in. Let me ask you this, what do you have to gain by being stubborn? And is it worth it to miss out on a relationship with your son and granddaughter? We never wanted you out of our lives, we just want mutual respect. Let's talk. Today, Friday, my mom sends the following back to my partner. If my son wants to be the person I thought he was, I will welcome him with open arms. I don't, however, want a relationship with a junior version of my ex-husband. Period. So now, we come to the present moment. I'm not actually seeking advice here. I felt like I was wrong, but also that our boundaries were being disrespected. So I don't regret my reaction. I needed my mom to know I wasn't going to accept her hostile texts, and in that sense I've succeeded. But I've also imploded my relationship with my mom. I was hoping that by writing this, it would help me process everything that is going on, and maybe help someone else too. I've read a lot of posts about men basically being doormats to their mothers, and I hope this inspires someone else to stand up for themselves. Yeah, it hurts, but in exchange, you can have peace. Hellfreezer's note. I really don't think you were harsh here. I don't think you were overly harsh. You seemed cordial and reasonable throughout the whole thing. And your mother made choices. Maybe she'll make different choices somewhere down the line, and it's up to you whether or not you want to open that door again. If you have an opportunity by moving out of state, seize it. Telephones, internet, all these things still exist if your mother wants to be mature and reconnect in a civil way. But I don't think she's sorry. I don't think she's sorry just yet. I think she needs more than a month to miss you. And I hope everything works out, and that things do improve. But perhaps look back on your relationship and ask yourself, is this recent behavior, or has it always been this way? Maybe it just looked different when you weren't married. Whatever happens, I wish the best for you and your family. 4. I've been with my husband for 9 years, so it's 9 years of audacity and just ridiculous behavior. He won't go no contact, but I don't want to spend more than I have to time-wise with her. She's obsessed with seeing us more. He has been telling me she means well, but this past year I started to see her do things that made me think it's not well-meaning behavior. My therapist said she's a narcissist, and I believe her now. First time we met, she complained about my sister-in-law's house not being very clean. But like, your son lives there too. And she did not raise her boys to clean, so of course they are clueless. She is my father-in-law's second wife. He left his first wife and 2 young kids for her, so her pick-me attitude is not a new thing. He also cheated on her, duh, and she used to go out of her way to bring it up. Even on Father's Day, she would be at his house complaining that his mistress's art was on the wall. Like, why are you here then? No one needs you to be here. Also, this was 25 years ago, and he's tried to get back together with her, and she refused. But also, she is still with him all the time. She just wants to punish him for doing to her what she did to his first wife. Karma. Claimed she grew up around Italians, but then said Christmas Eve, what even is that? When we invited them for the Christmas Eve instead of Christmas. She's Jewish, by the way. My family is Roman Catholic Italian. We went to Catholic school and church, and we celebrate it as a religious holiday, not a Hallmark holiday. When we announced we were pregnant, we went to brunch with the family. She asked me loudly in front of the whole table, "So are your boobs getting bigger? Are you enjoying that?" In front of his grandma and father. I didn't answer because WTF. When we got engaged, we went to her house and she looked at my ring and said, "Oh, it looks so big on the website." It's almost 2 carat center stone, so I don't know what she expected. When we had our daughter, she came to the hospital doused in perfume and held the baby, who of course stunk after that. She always douses herself in perfume and leaves her awful stink behind whenever she is around us, or at my house. When the first baby was a few weeks old, we hadn't slept. My first didn't sleep more than 30 minutes at a clip. She said she was in the neighborhood and wanted to come drop gifts off. We told her the baby was sleeping. She doesn't live by us at all, so she wasn't in the area, but we allowed her to come. She proceeded to crouch over the baby on the couch and loudly talk to her to try to wake her up. The first time we asked her to babysit, so we could go to my friend's birthday party, she called us an hour before we were supposed to be at the party from her car, on speakerphone, and said her friend was in the car and could she come with. We politely told her, why don't you hang with your friend and we can stay home, no big deal. She told us she was already on her way. She lives about 45 to an hour away, so she planned this for sure. We said it's fine, don't come. An hour later, she shows up with her friend. We were sitting in the living room telling her what to do, and she proceeded to ask me if they can give her a bath. I said no, and she argued with me saying, "Are you sure?" over and over when I kept saying no. Her friend was visibly uncomfortable. Then she told us she wanted our Nest camera password so when she babysits, she can watch our daughter. Like it's your first time, and also, hell no, weirdo. Her son, my fiancé at the time, almost died. He had a bilateral pulmonary embolism, which has a very, very low survival rate. He was at the hospital, and I called her to let her know they were bringing a priest to his room, and she should head there. She starts asking me who's watching the baby, and if she can come to my house and watch her instead. I told her no, my parents were on their way, and just go to the hospital. Of course, she had to ask me if I was sure, and if she could come to see the baby after the hospital, like, your child is what you should be worrying about, not mine, you butthead. She was asked to not post my kid on social media. We don't post her, and no one else is allowed. She waited till her mom died and used a picture of her mother holding the baby in the hospital on her second day of life as her tribute post. She posts her grandchildren on the very public profile incessantly, and she is the reason we had this rule to begin with. If you Google her name, nothing but my niece's pictures comes up in her search results. She has an obsession with feeding my daughter off her fork and out of her plate. I've told her before not to do it. She pretends she doesn't understand. I had to make an awkward scene at Mother's Day this year because I kept asking her to stop and she kept giving me alternatives like, I gave her her own fork, or offering her her half-eaten soup with my daughter's own spoon. I had an 8-week-old baby at the time. Like, why would you want to risk getting my daughter sick and then the baby sick? Keep your germs to yourself, for crying out loud. She has come over with a runny nose and a pocket full of dirty tissues the last time we let her babysit in the middle of winter, and said it's allergies after we asked her if she was sick. My daughter gets breathing treatments when she's sick because she has some issues. She then proceeds to tell my daughter she got her something and pulls out a kazoo. She blows in it to show my daughter how to use it, and then gives it to her to try, and of course my 3-year-old puts it in her mouth. What the hell? I left her a stack of guest towels in a very obvious spot in the guest room, and the next day after she showers and leaves, I go to check the room and clean it, and the towels are sitting there untouched. She used my bath towels and hand towels, and I don't know what she washed herself with because her washcloth was also untouched. I'm full-blooded Italian, and she is Jewish Eastern European. She invited us over for Sunday dinner. We go. It's his whole family, all Jewish Eastern European. I didn't eat meat at the time, so she told me she made me a special meal. It was jarred pasta sauce and steamed broccoli. No garlic or oil, no salt, no nothing. I had never had jarred sauce because that is an insult to Italians. We don't eat that. Everyone else at the table had homemade sauce with broccoli and butter, and also fake Parmesan cheese. Kraft, not real. So the only Italian at the table got gross jarred sauce. It was one of the most insulting things she's ever done to me. I didn't even eat because, of course, the jarred sauce is gross, but just why? Why would you do that? It's so disrespectful. She claims she grew up around Italians, so I can't see how she didn't know that's a major faux pas. She is a major pick-me girl with the kids and always has to have their full attention. She's over the top. But what's more infuriating is she will not ask us and give them markers or messy projects that include food dye and vegetable oil. And she just shows up with this stuff. So on a holiday, when I have my daughter in a nice new dress, My mother-in-law will hand her food coloring and ruin her clothes. She even brought a lava lamp homemade project to my sister-in-law's house without asking, and she spilled vegetable oil on their new paver patio and furniture. She is just an idiot. But also she's rude, and she doesn't offer to replace things after she ruins them. She will bring arts and crafts projects to the kitchen table and try to set them up around the food so she can do them with my daughter. She almost ruined lunch once this way because she spilled all the chia seeds and soil over the table. It was a huge mess. She also tries to get the kids away from a party to be alone with her so she can have all their attention. I've had to tell my daughter to come up from the basement and be with the guests because my mother-in-law took her down there and was playing alone in my unfinished basement with her for like an hour. It was bizarre. She is obsessed with babies, and she absolutely loses her mind in all social propriety when someone has one. My sister has a baby boy, and she is obsessed with him. It makes everyone uncomfortable. My brother-in-law brought him with him to a party at my house once, and he had to leave him with us till my parents got there. My mother-in-law waited till he left, and then went right up to my aunt and asked to hold him, and then took him off the living room away from his entire family to be alone with him. I made my husband get him back. I was so furious. But then the next time she saw the baby, my sister was there, and again she asked her, "Do you think you would let me hold him?" And my sister said, "Okay," uncomfortably. My sister walked away and left him in the kitchen with her, and my mom and I were cleaning. I turned around and she has fingers in his mouth. I asked her, "Are those your fingers in his mouth?" I was angry. She goes, "Yeah, why? Is that not okay?" All clueless and ditzy. I tell her, "No, that's not okay, it's disgusting." He starts fussing and she gets up and starts going in the opposite direction of my sister. So I took him because, you shouldn't be holding him to begin with. But if he's fussing, give him back to my sister for Christ's sake. Thanksgiving this year, she told my mother and sister, while 6 months pregnant, that she wishes she could breastfeed the baby she watches. I was so floored I told her that's wildly inappropriate, and I would be very angry if someone did that to my baby. And she cluelessly answered, "Well, I wouldn't mind. If I could find a way to lactate, I would." My mother and my sister were floored. It was so awkward, and I had to walk away because that's disgusting. And I decided she couldn't be alone with my kids anymore. She tried to wrestle a kid's craft out of my hand at a birthday party once, because she was closer to my daughter, and my daughter asked me to help with the craft. And my mother-in-law rushed over, and we both grabbed it at the same time, and she would not let go. It was bizarre. Let me parent, you goon. She is one of those people who will follow you when you go to change your baby's diaper and talk at the baby and baby talk over your shoulder. I recently gave birth, and we invited them to come by because they would be in the area. Of course she agrees, and then asks if Gina can come. My husband and I are like, "Who's Gina?" She says, "Oh, she works at your dad's office in Georgia. We're coming down there for a business meeting, and she will be with us." I'm like, "Are you kidding? You want to bring a stranger to my house to meet my days-old newborn while I'm in a diaper bleeding and just gave birth? No! And who asks something like that?" When they did come, she stayed for 3.5 hours and just kept washing her hands and saying, "I'm ready to hold him whenever you want. My hands are clean and I can hold him." You already held him and I'm not offering. Why don't you stop asking and read the room? You've overstayed your welcome. Who does that to a freshly postpartum mom? 3.5 hours of ignoring her passive-aggressive request to take my days-old baby. WTF. We had the flu the week before Christmas this year, and she would not stop asking to come over and bring the gifts. We kept telling her no because her husband, they're separated, it's a whole other story, has cancer, and he can't be exposed to the flu because he's on chemo. She did not care and just kept saying, "We will just come and drop off the gifts on Christmas." It was infuriating. I'm 7 months pregnant and was so sick and hadn't cleaned my house or been able to do anything in a week, and she just did not care about anyone but herself. We invited them over during my pregnancy for lunch. She passive-aggressively greets my daughter at the door and starts going on and on about how she hasn't seen her in so long. It's been a month, lady, not a decade. She then waits till my husband is asleep on the floor and starts asking what we do on Tuesdays. I tell her we are busy, my kid has cheer, and she says, "Oh, I was thinking I would come over on Tuesday nights after I leave so-and-so's. It's such a shame." "Don't worry," she says, referring to my daughter. "We will find a way to see each other more." First off, don't invite yourself to my house. Second off, we will never see you once a week. You're a lunatic. Third of all, don't make plans with my 6-year-old. And there's a lot more. It's exhausting. I want to be done with her. She's got an unhealthy attachment to other people's children, and hasn't ever worked, so she has no career. Coincidentally, she asked me several times if she can live with us when she runs out of money, but get a job so you don't run out of money? I don't know. I guess this is a rant, but also sometimes I feel like maybe I just don't like her and it's a me issue. Some of the stuff she does is potentially harmful, but some is just because I'm just always annoyed with her. Hellfreezer's note: I really don't think you're unjustified in some of the things you've said here. I mean, the breastfeeding thing alone? I think that'd be justification to completely cut her off. Obviously, that's a discussion you need to have with your husband. Low contact would certainly be a viable idea. Clearly, I think from what you've said, she's not someone who's going to change. She seems very, very unerudite in her opinions and unwilling to learn. And you just can't win with people like that. But best of luck to you. 5. Okay, I work as a door greeter at you-know-where. So I'm used to compliments like, "I like your pins, where did you get them?" Some of these pins are from vacations, conventions I attended, and online. I have this one lady, an entitled mother, who has a kid about 7 or 9. I don't really know. They always talk to me about one pin her child likes, which is actually a button. It has a griffin, a creature with the front half being an eagle and the other of a lion. It's done by a friend of mine who does MLP-style art, so it looks kinda cute. Entitled kid always loves it and talks about it, then hints she wants it. I told her my friend's website to commission one of her own, but EM kind of shuts it down with kind of a look. Well, yesterday EK and EM come in around 7 p.m. and do their normal round of shopping. Usual normal banter, but EM suddenly just said, "My daughter really likes your button and one of your pins. Can you just let her have them?" I'm shocked because I know which pin the kid wants and the button. The pin is of Mothra from Japan and is my favorite. I tell her no. And she can find the pin on eBay, and the button was a commissioned work made for me. I actually spent money getting this made for me. EM just said, "I know you didn't waste your money on this stuff. The pin is like $5 and the button you got for free out of some kid grab bag." I'm shocked, and I pull the pin on my phone and show the price to be about $25, and my friend's Fur Affinity commission page, which proves I paid at least $15 for a custom button of my griffin. I tell her no and that she can buy these online, and I will not just give her these. She decides to tell my manager I stole the pin and button from her daughter. My manager, on the other hand, tells the woman that I have had these on my vest since I started in March. My manager also is on my side because EM is a downright Karen to nearly all in this store. She complains about nearly every service we provide, even if the provisions are needed. She still goes off about the pin and button, that her daughter deserves them, and that I am a grown woman who needs to grow up. My manager tells her to leave me alone and let me do my job. So, in short, I am expected to give my own personal property to a customer's child. After saying no, I am accused of stealing from her, and that I somehow must give it up because Mothra pin and my Griffin button are for kids. FYI, I don't know what American kid would like Japanese Godzilla movies currently. I'm glad my manager agreed with me and also backed me up. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Proudness of Parents. Ipop. Episode 131. That never gets old. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. And if you want to get all these videos early, get all 7 videos on a Monday at once, well, support me on my Patreon page. That's how we make that happen. Do that for as little as $1 or more a month. You'll also find a link in the description to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring, as well as a link to the Hellfreezer Discord. Almost forgot that part. And if you really enjoyed today's video, you can leave a tip for that by clicking on the heart with a $sign. While they're never required, they are very much appreciated, and I truly do mean that. It helps a lot. Okay, no other bits and bobs today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... I should maybe stop calling this Hellfreezer's question of the day, because they're only mine about half the time. Screw it, we'll keep it. And today's question is... How do you feel about fancified versions of sodas? Like right now I'm drinking Coca-Cola with lemon. And there's obviously various others. Cherry, vanilla, there was a weird star one that I never got to try. I've not been able to find it. And I think Pepsi did their like super filtered one. It was like Tiny Bubbles. I can't remember the exact name. Pepsi Tiny Bubbles or something like that. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. Do you like them? Do you not waste your time with them? Are they a sin against humanity? Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And I think this one was about school lunches, as I recall. And today's answer comes from Surat. My school served a boiled spinach and carrot dish that had all the flavour of damp paper towels and the consistency of just barely congealed oatmeal. About the only way to choke that down was to suck up as much water from it with paper towels, save it for last, and let it hopefully dry out some. Then flood it with vinegar dressing. Thank you very much for your answer, Surat. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.